Hello, Alan. Yep, I see your camera. If we could do a mic check, please.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Thank you. All right. And Amanda, if we could do a mic and camera check, please. See you there. Just test audio. Can you say something, Amanda?
Oh, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. All right, everyone. We'll be leaving the practice session and going into the full webinar where the public will be able to see us. So I will be doing that now, and then we can start the meeting momentarily.
Quick question before you do that. Who's Henry?
Yes.
Henry Duong.
What?
Henry as a panelist.
Henry is our he's our examination administration manager, and he's here to support Carol Gagnon, who is in executive training today. Carol is our licensing chief.
Thank you.
And Rodney just joined us. So Rodney, if I could have you do a camera and mic check before we go into the webinar. See you there, Rodney.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. My camera. Let me get back on.
You're here now, so thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Sorry about that.
All right. Now it looks like we have most everyone. So I will be transitioning, like I said, out of the practice session and into the full webinar. And then, like I said, the public will then be able to see us. And then we can, like I said, start the meeting in just a moment.
What the heck happened?
And Diana, we can begin the meeting now.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. The time is 8:02. I call to order the November 15th, 2023 meeting of the Contractor State License Board. I am Diana Love, CSLB's board chair. Board members, please leave your camera on during the meeting. When you would like to comment during the meeting, please select the raise your hand icon in the WebEx application. I will call on board members to speak. When called upon, please unmute yourself, and when finished, return to mute. Chief of Public Affairs Catherine White is our host and moderator today. Please note for board records that we will have excused absences for Mary Tykert and David Delatorre. Robin Williams, please confirm board members' attendance and roll call.
Joelle Barton.
Here.
Rodney Kobos.
Here.
David Delatorre, excused absence. Miguel Galarza.
Here.
Amanda Gallo.
Here.
Susan Granzella.
Here.
Alan Guy,
Here.
Jacob Lopez,
Like Jacob needs to unmute. Present.
I see him.
Present.
Thank you. Diana Love,
Here.
Steve Pinelli,
Here.
Michael Mark,
Here.
Jim Ruane.
Here.
And Mary Tykert, excused absence. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Robin. In addition to the board members present, we are joined for the open session by Board Counsel John Ken, Registrar Foat, Chief Deputy Registrar Mike Jamelski, Legislative Chief Fauna Lamar, Public Affairs Chief Catherine White, IT Chief Jason Perez, Enforcement Chief Steve Grove, and Licensing Manager Henry Dunn on behalf of Carol Gagon, who is training today. Catherine, please confirm the flag is on the screen. It is. Thank you. At this time, we will have Board Vice Chair Michael Mark lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right, if everyone could please rise and take off your caps. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will now move to agenda item B, which is for public comment and to request agenda items for future meetings. The board values public input as part of our consumer protection mission to allow us enough time to conduct our full schedule of business today. I am limiting public comments to 3 minutes apiece. There are a few other rules that apply. First, California law prohibits board members from discussing any matter brought up during public comment, and board members are not allowed to act on any item on today's agenda. If you want the board to discuss a topic on the agenda, you can ask us to consider placing that issue on the agenda for a future meeting. If you have an application, complaint, or disciplinary charges pending before the board, we ask that you do not discuss the details of your case or pending complaint. This is because board members may be the judges and by law are not permitted to receive evidence or information that is not part of the administrative record in the case. Members of the public, if you are with us on WebEx and would like to make a comment, use the chat feature to send the host a note that you would like to offer public comment. If you are joining us on the phone and would like to make a public comment, press *9. We will take any WebEx comments first, followed by telephone comments. You will also find instructions on how to make public comments on the agenda for this meeting, which is posted on the CSLB website. Board members, please raise your hand if you have an agenda item that you would like to be placed on the future meeting agenda. Catherine, do you see any hands raised?
No hands raised at this time.
Okay, would you now check to see if there are any members of the public who wish to address the board or offer an agenda item for future meetings?
I do not at this time.
Okay, thank you. We are now on agenda item C regarding the board's upcoming sunset review. The content for these items is a 54-page handout that was published last week and is on the website linked to today's meeting. The handout is called Proposed Responses to 2018 Prior Issues and Summary Drafts of 2024 New Issues. There are 17 prior issues and 6 proposed new issues. You may recall at the September 14th, 2023 board meeting, the board discussed all of the prior issues. that are before you today in the handout, pages 1 through 43. These are 17 issues that the legislature asked the board to follow up on during the board's last sunset review in 2018. They are presented here today, again today, with only some minor edits and updates from what was previously discussed at the September meeting. To take us through the 17 prior issues briefly is Legislative Chief Fana Lamar. Fana will point out anything that may have changed in the prior issues since the September meeting. After Fana provides her update, I will request board members and public comment. Fana, go ahead and please start.
Thank you, Chair Love. Good morning, board members. These are still in draft form, so like Chair Love said, these are presented for your review. I will not go into detail about each issue. I did that in September, so I'll just discuss what the changes from what you previously reviewed are. First, I want to give a couple reminders to make this discussion run more smoothly. Each issue in the written document has 5 parts. First is the issue itself. This is the question the legislature is asking of CSLB. Second is the background. This provides the context for why the legislature is interested in the particular topic. Third is the committee's recommendations. This is information they want us to include in our response, so this informs why we might have lengthy responses for some questions. Fourth is our previous response, which was submitted in response to the previous background paper in 2018, and then our current response, which is what you will be approving when the full sunset report is on the agenda for approval in December. Like last meeting, we have each issue in the legislature's recommendations on the or we will have it on the screen, so you can see the question to which we're responding. I know there's slides for that. Can those be? Thank you. Okay, so also the font in the written document is blue, so it's easier for you to tell which text is our current response and which we need you to review. So the first one is staffing issues. The legislature would like to know how our staffing challenges impact operations. Our proposed response begins on page 2. We left the majority of this response alone. We still discussed difficulties filling vacancies, provide solar complaint information, talk about disaster recovery participation and unanticipated workload in implementing 216. The only substantive edits were that we removed any references to a new issue that would allow applicants to submit insurance after determining that it should be dropped. So I believe Chair or Registrar Vogt will talk about that later in the meeting. The second issue, board quorum, the legislature was asking if our board vacancies impact our ability to have a quorum. It hasn't, so there have been no changes, substantive or non-substantive, to what you reviewed in September. The third issue is regarding implementing legislation. The legislature wants to know how we are able to implement so many bills with our limited staff resources. So I talk about what each division's role in implementing legislation is. They also ask about potential issues. So for that, I discuss IT because without delayed implementation, IT doesn't have time to secure staffing resources in the form of contractors or staff. So CSLB has absorbed a significant workload, IT workload, implementing legislation. So the only edit we made to this one was also removing the same new issue that we removed from issue 1. Issue 4 was about our fund condition. We did not make any edits at all to what you read in September. Issue 5 was a question about pro rata. That's the money that we pay to DCA in order to fund their operations so they can provide centralized services to us, including legal, human resources, fiscal operations, and other services that they provide. This response also was not edited. Issue 6 is about examination pass rates. This question, or our proposed response to this question, was substantively edited. The proposed response begins on page 13. I updated this response after the examinations that were translated into Spanish went live, and we had some data to speak about. So you'll see the addition as the third paragraph on page 14. And it just talks about the number of Spanish examinations that have been administered and comparing the candidates who failed the exam in English and then took the exam in Spanish and were able to pass. Issue 7 is about licensing and certifications, how often we review our licenses and certifications to see if they need updating. When this was presented in September, we had highlighted text, which informed the board that this response would be expanded. Text was added regarding expanding the hazardous substance removal certificate to also include debris removal in declared disaster areas. You'll see that on as paragraph 2 on page 18. And this is also a new issue that will be discussed after I go through these prior issues. So we don't go into detail on this response because we will go into detail in the new issue, which is a legislative proposal. Issue 8, enforcement priorities. This issue remains, this proposed response begins on page 20 and the proposed response is unchanged. Issue 9, disaster response. The proposed response begins on page 24. And the legislature asked how we work with other agencies and how we redirect staff to participate in disaster response. We did not substantively edit this. The only change we made was to add a chapter number after SB 601 by Senator McGuire was signed by the governor. So that's at the bottom of page 25. Issue 10 was about workers' comp and whether everyone should have workers' compensation insurance. We responded by discussing SB 216, which is being implemented. Therefore, this proposed response was not edited. Issue 11 regarding tree worker safety and if we should have expanded enforcement authority. This issue was also resolved in 2021 with the passage of AB 2210. So this proposed response has not been edited from what you saw in September. Issue 12 regarding business modernization. This is the only prior issue that's still in process. Our IT chief will have a response ready when we present the whole report for your review and approval in December. We're still working on that response. Because there's still things developing. So issue 13, this is on page 34. The legislature asks if we have any technical changes to our law that we need. We do. And we will submit proposed technical amendments for next year. The committee set a deadline of January 12th. So the proposal for our technical amendments will likely be on the December board meeting agenda. Issue 14 regarding LLC application processing times. The proposed response begins on page 37. This issue is fully resolved, so the proposed response has not been edited from what you saw in September. Issue 15 regarding unsatisfied judgments. The proposed response begins on page 38. This issue has also been resolved through legislation. SB 610 by Senator Glazer in 2019 closed the gap in authorities. So this response also was not edited. Issue 16, the proposed response is on page 40. This one was substantively edited. When I presented the prior issues at the last board meeting, this issue is still being researched. So the issue is that CSLB is authorized to enforce Labor Code 108, which requires electricians to be certified. During the last sunset review, CSLB submitted a proposal as a new issue to set the C10 enforcement fee at $20, and the legislature wondered how this fee would resolve staffing issues associated with enforcing the labor code. The joint committees did not add this to the sunset extension bill. However, the fee was set at $20 by SB 610 in 2019 by Senator Blitzer. In addition to the proposed response is why positions were not. So the addition that we made to the proposed response that you saw in September was why positions were not immediately created, which, if approved through the BCP process, would have been created in fiscal year 22-23. So that is what we added. Fees were increased because the fund was approaching insolvency, and we wanted to make sure the fund was stable enough to create positions and continue to pay for them. So I talk about that. You will see that description as the bottom two paragraphs of page 40. And the final issue, issue 17, continued regulation. The legislature asks if CSLB should be continued. I said yes in September, and that remains unchanged. That's all of them.
Thank you, Fauna. Thank you, Fauna, for briefly explaining those 17 prior issues. Do any board members have any questions or comments on the sunset process or the prior issues that we have just heard? Catherine, do you see any hands raised?
I do not at this time.
Okay, would you please check to see if there are any public comments?
No public comments at this time either.
Okay, thank you. We are still on the same agenda item, but we are now turning to the proposed new issues. We are now on pages 43 through 48 of your packet. The board may recall that at the September 14th, 2023 meeting, the board discussed 9 proposed new issues. You will see in the board packet there are now 6 proposed new issues. As you will recall, Miguel and I were appointed to a 2-person sunset hearing advisory committee. As such, I will take the lead on introducing the first 3 new issues, and Miguel will introduce the other 3 new issues. After Miguel and I have discussed the 6 new issues, Dave Folk will explain why staff have recommended not pursuing 3 other issues discussed at the September board meeting.
Excuse me, Diana, Dave does have his hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to note that Mary Tykert has joined the meeting.
Thank you, Dave. Please note that she is no longer absent. The new issues section contains legislative proposals that the board would like the legislature to resolve by amending the Contractors state license law in the Sunset Extension Bill. I will cover the first 3. Miguel will cover the next 4 through 6. The first issue is industry expert reimbursement. A summary of the issue is on page 43 of your packet. This new issue would propose authorizing CSLB to charge a contractor when an industry expert is required to inspect a project to determine that work is required to complete a project or bring a project up to industry standard. The majority of CSLB consumer file complaints involving allegations that work was not completed per contract or to industry trade standards. Unfortunately, some contractors rely on CSLB to pay for an industry expert to inspect their work and to tell them how to correct and complete their contracted work. The industry expert inspection also determines the financial harm incurred by the consumer. This makes the inspections a critical step in providing consumer protection. Inspection reports are most often used in settlements, citations, letters of admonishment, or arbitration. These actions do not provide cost recovery. So in these cases, CSLB absorbs the cost of these inspections, which average $750 per complaint. This proposal would allow CSLB to recover IE costs when the completed investigation results in a letter of admonishment or administrative citation. A letter of admonishment and citation both provide the contractor an appeal process. This proposal would provide a deterrent to contractors who repeatedly rely on CSLB to contract with an industry expert to serve as quality control for their business rather than responding timely to their customer complaints. Before I go forward, I'm going to ask if the board has any comments. Catherine, do you see any hands raised?
Seeing none.
Okay, would you please check to see if there are any public comments?
Seeing none there as well.
Thank you. The second new issue is a proposal to raise minimum administrative fines and adopt them in statute. This summary is on page 44. The Office of the Attorney General has reported that an appeal citation heard in an administrative hearing costs CSLB approximately $9,000, far greater than the potential $100 civil penalty. Perhaps more importantly, the fine needs to be commiserated with the public harm caused and to serve as deterrent for future violations. The contractor's state license law does not prescribe a minimum statutory fine. The minimum fine is set in regulation for most violations at $100, and it has not been raised since 2007. Or to put it another way, the minimum fine has not kept pace with inflation. This proposal would raise minimum citation amounts in line with the Consumer Price Index. I'll stop there and ask, are there any board comments? Do you see any hands, Catherine?
Yes, Michael Mark has his hand raised.
Okay, Michael?
Thank you, Chair Love. Yes, I appreciate that recommended solution. As everyone knows, sometimes there's the carrot and the stick option, and fortunately, sometimes you got to sharpen that stick. So this would be a really good recommendation for legislation.
Thank you. Are there any board comments? Excuse me, any public comments?
No public comment at this time.
Okay, thank you. The third new issue is a proposal to expand the hazardous waste removal certificate to include debris removal and excavation at declared disaster sites. This summary begins on page 44 of your packet. Cleanup is one of the most urgent needs before a consumer can rebuild after a disaster. Debris removal may pose a health and safety risk. Yet the current certificate only authorizes the licensed contractor to perform duties in two qualifying capacities. One, when installing or removing underground storage tanks, and two, when removing hazardous substance from sites that are noted on specific government websites. However, these sites do not currently include residential wildfire or flood disaster sites. This proposal would require a contractor to obtain a hazardous waste removal certificate to perform debris removal in declared disaster areas. This proposal will be of great benefit to public health and safety in declared disaster areas by ensuring contractors are knowledgeable about safe hazardous substance removal practices. Now asked if there are any board comments.
Seeing none at this time.
And do we have any public comments?
No public comments at this time.
Thank you. That concludes the first three issues. I will now turn it over to Miguel Garza for issues 4 through 6. Miguel.
Thank you, Chair Love. The fourth new issue is a proposal to have the license applicants pay the examination fees directly to PSI. The summary of this issue is on page 45 of your booklet. CSLB commissioned a fee study that recommended changes in the manner in which CSLB's application fees, which were amended into law effective January 1st of 2022. However, those fees did not include the cost of PSI to administer a first-time examination, which was intended to be a standalone fee paid to the administrator. However, outsourcing did not take place until January 1st of 2022, so it will not included in the legislation that set the fees. Consequently, CSLB has been absorbing the examination administrative costs since January of 2022, and the applicants have not been paying the fee to take an examination to CSLB or the vendor. This is inconsistent with other boards and bureaus whose applicants pay the vendor, which in this case PSI, directly. CSLB is part of the master contract with DCA for PSI to administer its exams. In addition, currently by statute, must charge the applicants $100 to reschedule an examination. For example, if they needed to change their test date or failed to at first or subsequent attempts at the exam, regardless of how many exams needed to be rescheduled, the $100 includes the CSLB cost to process the re-examination request and approximately $50 paid to PSI. This proposal would strike CSLB's collection of that $100 entirely. As a result of this proposal, CSLB would no longer accept payment from applicants for rescheduled examinations and would no longer pay PSI $50 per examination that in fact PSI administers. In exchange, the applicant would pay less than $50 to take an examination for the first time with PSI and approximately $50 less to reschedule an examination, closer to $50 per rescheduled examination. Any comments from the board on that item? Seeing
no comments at this time.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on that item?
Seeing none at this time as well.
Thank you so much. I will then move on to the fifth new issue, which is the proposal that would include the contractors law and types of businesses that Indian tribals are formed under. The summary of this issue is on page 46 of your packet. Under current law, CSLBs licensing sole proprietor partnerships, corporations, and LLCs. This proposal would add state and federally recognized tribal-owned businesses, tribal chartered corporations, or state chartered tribal corporations to that list. Indian tribes seeking to perform construction outside of tribal or federal land need a contractor's license like anyone else. However, federally recognized tribes are not an entity that CSLB is authorized to license. This proposal would authorize the state and federally recognized tribal organizations as entities that can qualify for a contractor's license. All other license requirements will still be needed to be completed and work with workman's comp insurance requirements as well. Are there any board members that want to make a comment on this new proposal or issue? Hearing and seeing none, can staff review to see if there's any public comment?
Seeing none, actually we do have a hand raised.
All
So,
right.
I will call upon, Annalise Rivero, and I will be sending her a request to unmute. Annalise, you should be able to speak now.
Perfect. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm Annalise Rivero. I'm Associate Director of Policy at California Trout, and I just wanted to speak in support of this particular item. Cal Trout works closely with tribes across the state, and we believe that this could help increase the capacity for restoration work. We particularly work with the Yurok Construction Company. I've just been very impressed with them and think this would go a long way for increasing landscape scale restoration. So yes, we strongly support the inclusion of the provision that would recognize tribes as licensed construction companies. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comments?
Seeing none at this time.
Thank you so much. With that, I move on to the sixth new issue on this proposal, and that would be to exempt CSLB from being responsible for paying attorney's fees in a private civil case between a contractor's bond claimant and contractors. The summary of this issue is on page 47 of your booklet. A recent California court opinion, Carlton versus RE Design, found that the surety bond company holding licensed contractors' bond can be forced to pay attorney's fees of the litigants' parties when the surety company does not release the bond early in the litigation. CSLB is not a surety and does not sell bonds. CSLB is statutorily required to hold cash deposits for licensees that prefer to obtain a cashier's check in lieu of obtaining a security bond. By statute, CSLB has no discretion to release a cash deposit. The cash deposit can only be released by CSLB when ordered to do so by a civil court. This proposal is needed to make clear that CSLB is not a surety and has no discretion to release a cash deposit and is not subject to any financial liability under the Carlton case. Any comments from the board on this item?
Seeing none at this time.
Thank you. Any comments from the public on this item?
None at this time there as well.
Thank you so much. Back to you, Chair Love.
Thank you, Board Member Galaza. At this time, I will call upon Registrar David Full to please update the board on the issues no longer recommended for sunset review. Dave?
Thank you, Chair Love. If we would turn to page 48 of the packet. Just some background on Business and Professions Code 7068.1. This statute establishes criteria that restricts the amount of licenses an individual can qualify. And also it poses requirements that the qualifier has sufficient direction and control over the construction activities. It has a related section of law that states that if you have less than 10% of the voting stock, you must post a qualifier bond. So if you have less than 10%, you got to post a qualifier bond. And then if you want to qualify more than one license, you have to meet certain restrictions. And one of the ways you can qualify more than one license is if you state that you have 20% of the equity of each license qualified. So industry has brought to our attention that that's a little bit cumbersome. Arguably, we're not able to confirm the percentage owned of every entity. So there might be alternatives to that, such as posting additional qualifier bonds. This has been something that industry has brought to our attention. It also restricts the number of licenses that can be qualified at any one time. So it's, the law is fairly specific under 7068.1 subdivisions 3BA that reads as follows. A qualifying individual may not act as a qualifier for more than 3 firms in any 1 year period. Something else has come to our attention. Well, if somebody is qualifying 3 and they disassociate from 1, why is there a 12-month requirement? They wait to qualify a 3rd license. When we're looking at all this, though, we want to stay focused on consumer protection. So if the board is considering legislation, it needs to be based on a need to enhance consumer protection. Industry can sponsor their own legislation if it's in their benefit. They can do that, and then the board could review that legislation, decide to support it, take some other approach, perhaps oppose or stay neutral. So I have met with industry stakeholders regarding this, and we've agreed that we're going to meet on November 28th at 3 p.m. unless the board has any concerns about that meeting. But the idea is we're going to meet and we're going to go over all the issues, make sure we understand what the concerns are, and then decide how best to approach those concerns. And this might be something we would bring back to the board at a later date, but we are recommending at this time that it not be part of the sunset review process. So I'll send it back to you, Chair Love. Would you like to ask for board and public comment regarding this?
Maybe on the other side, I'm not quite sure.
Thank you, Dave. Catherine, will you check? Are there any board comments on this item?
Being no board comments at this time.
Okay, would you please check to see if there are any public comments?
Seeing no public comment at this time.
Okay, back to you, Dave.
Okay, thank you. So the second issue is regarding workers' compensation insurance. And we were taking a close look at this because as the board knows, in 2026, all licensed contractors will be required to have a workers' compensation insurance policy on file with CSLB. And so we're looking to make things as efficient as possible. Now, in doing the research, we discovered that the process we have in place today is actually working very well. There's two ways you can submit proof of workers' compensation insurance to the board. One is by inputting exactly as a policy reads into a CSLB portal. Now that is done by insurance brokers and insurance companies, so it's restricted to them. And we found in the last 12 months that 86,000 policies had been uploaded in that fashion. So that's a tremendous success. We also discovered that we will accept and we can accept the hard copy of the certificate of insurance. So if you're a licensee and for whatever reason your broker hasn't inputted the information into the portal, you can send it to CSLB, mail, fax, email, and we'll update the records in a timely manner. So this is very important so we can keep the license from being unjustly or unfairly suspended. So looking at the process and talking to our licensing staff, we believe the current the programs we have in place today are sufficient to meet the need. And so because of that, we don't believe that we need to move forward with this as an issue for sunset review. Back to you, Chair Love, for any comments.
Are there any comments from the board?
Seeing no comments from the board.
Are there any comments from the public?
No comments from the public.
Okay. Back to you, Dave, for the last item, last issue.
Sure. Thank you. So the third issue would be the creation of the C49 tree and palm classification. So something the board supported, directed staff to use the regulatory rulemaking process to create a new specialty classification. And we're real pleased to report that the trade exam was developed, and that classification will be issued starting January 1st, 2024. Now, we have worked closely with the tree service industry, one in crafting the regulatory rulemaking package, and we certainly had their support during the process, but also to really justify the need for this classification. And I know we have some representatives with us today from the tree service industry. So we once again thank the tree service industry for the support in creating this classification. I just want to emphasize that CSLB and the staff here are committed to having this new class be the industry standard. But we had brought this forward to the board with a recommendation that we would sunset or eliminate the D49. The D49 is the classification that's being replaced because it's a limited specialty and it doesn't provide for a trade exam. So the new C49 does have the trade exam. When we were going through the regulatory rulemaking process, the Office of Administrative Law was not receptive to moving our existing D49 tree service licensees into the new C49 tree and palm classification. So as it stands today, we have 3,468 active D49 licensees. And so we taking a hard look at this, we're uncomfortable at this time making a recommendation that we would propose legislation to not renew these 3,468 licensees or at some point cancel their license. We have had a meeting with the tree service industry representatives regarding this. I think they understand what our approach is. I know that they may make public comment in a few minutes that they would like to see all tree service licensees have passed an exam, but we don't find any precedent for the board ever canceling licenses or not renewing them. So from a staff perspective, we think through attrition that ultimately the new C49 classification will be the industry standard. And as time goes by, the D49s will become less until they're all C49. So we're comfortable that will happen, but it's back to you, Chair Love. There may be some comments on this issue.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Are there any comments from the board?
Seeing no comments from the board.
Any comments from the public?
Yes, we have an Ernesto Macias who is requesting a comment. I will be sending him a request to unmute. And Ernesto, you should be able to speak now. Ernesto? He's showing he is unmuted, but I am not hearing anything on this side.
Okay, we'll give him another minute.
Request him to unmute again. Ernesto, you have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
I apologize. This is Ernesto Macias with West Coast Arborist and Vice President of Risk Management and Labor Relations. And I would just like to echo what Mr. Fogg had stated, that this is a needed license that needs to take place here in California. West Coast Arborists, we're a proud union company who employs over 1,500 laborers throughout California, and we're in full support of this recommendation. And we can't wait until this license gets out there and actually the tests start happening and people start getting this license. So we would like to thank everyone on the board who worked on this and staff.
Any other comments, Catherine?
No other comments at this time.
Okay. Before we conclude our business for today, I just want to say that all of the items that you have heard today in the recap for our sunset review are very important for us to go forward. So before I adjourn the meeting, I want to give the board members and the public one last time to ask any questions or to make any comments on any of the issues that they have heard today. So if there are any board members that have any comments, please raise your hands or questions.
Seeing none at this time.
Okay, and any public comments or questions?
No public comment at this time as well.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. That concludes our business for the day. Can I please get a motion and a second to adjourn?
Wait, so moved.
Mary Tykert, second.
Thank you. This meeting is adjourned at 8:48 a.m. Everyone have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Oh my gosh, I can't get back over. Okay, there we go.
Good day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.